I've just had 2 dippy eggs. It's been marvellous.
How does that help me?
Oh, that's not necessarily helping you. It's just I thought I'd share. You know, I'm just kind of
a bit crazy. It's because I've had 2 dippy eggs this morning.
I've had 2 dippy eggs, and I've just made a cup of tea, and I'm now sitting in. I've changed the chair I sit in to record this podcast.
Right. Well, we could talk. Save this gold for the show,
gold,
Dan.
Simon. It's gold. Right. Here we go. Hello, I'm Dan.
I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
Dan, this week I'm delighted to say that we are talking about Hermine Haselböck.
Wow.
I know, what a name.
What a name.
Hermine Haselböck, born the 7th of March 1967 in Melk, Lower Austria, is an Austrian mezzo-soprano in opera, concert, and lead.
Wow. Milk, you say?
Milk. Oh, he needs some milk.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, there should be more like, oh, he needs some milk.
Part of the cathedral lot down here, one particularly drunken evening, we did invent a new kind of quite niche foreign cheese called Melg, M-E-L-G. And now that you've mentioned milk is clearly where Melg comes from. So I'll have to report this news.
What were the characteristics of was it Melg? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
What kind of cheese was it?
If memory serves correctly, I think it was quite a strong, soft cheese. It may have some kind of waxen rind.
Right. We saying a bit like an Edam, but softer?
Softer than an Edam.
Right.
It might be closer to something like Epoise or something.
Welcome to the Wikicast, everyone.
Which is a spectacularly strong, soft cheese that I had only last night with the cheese board after dinner, which was very good.
Yeah, you described yourself as being cheese... what was it, cheese drunk?
I think I was in a cheesy stupor.
Cheesy Stupor. Also, yes. That's Dan and I's new band that does exclusively covers of 90s pop songs. It's gonna be huge. Welcome to the stage, Cheesy Stupor. Woo! Throwing crackers on the stage, throwing little slices of apple.
Yeah.
It's a very middle class.
It's frisbeeing Lunchables onto the stage.
Little ham discs.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going for like the cheese board we had at the Rijksmuseum that one time, our most middle class moment. But I think we're going for the more primary school
Lunchables and Dairy Dunkers. How marvellous.
And a club. I swear, everybody had like their primary school like lunch composition, and for me a club was a key part of that, specifically orange clubs, mint if we're feeling a bit fruity. I had a friend who was all about the wagon wheels.
I think we had penguins.
A penguin.
I could never stand a wagon wheel.
Not me neither. They had marshmallow in, didn't they?
Yeah, marshmallow and a weird jammy jam to them. Which just didn't do it for me.
That and like cheese and Marmite sandwiches, that was my go-to.
Cheese and cucumber for me.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't see the point in cucumber. Cucumber is basically, it's just,
heavenly.
It's water in vegetable form. It's just solid water, but not cold like ice.
When we had, like ice, thanks for clarifying. When we had all that heat,
summer, as other people call it.
That's the one. That's it. Yeah. I regularly keep a cucumber in the fridge for sandwich purposes, but I discovered that actually if I was just sitting listening to a Twitch thing or a podcast or whatever, I'd recline on the sofa and cut myself some discs and just place them delicately on my eyes and have a little kind of just a little moment to myself.
Would you ever just like crunch down on the cucumber like it was like a carrot or something, like you were Bugs Bunny?
I think I have done that in my life. I don't think I'd make it a kind of a regular treat.
That was, for some reason, I remember when I was in sixth form and the Wii, I just got a Wii for the first time. It was a big moment. And I remember playing Wii golf, and I made a real thing of playing Wii golf and eating raw carrots, just like Bugs Bunny. Like just chomping down, and I hit a swing and be like, 4, oh, that's a good one, Simon. Oh, look
You're
at
kind
that.
of
Yeah.
The image I'm getting is that you're kind of like trying to be quite a classy golfer, but rather than having a cigar in the other hand, it's just a whole carrot.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
Oh, but sorry, we're meant to talk about Wikipedia. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is pretty much par for the course, you might say, for this
very
podcast.
good.
Right. Oh, God, I've just realised that I'm going to have to mangle a lot of German pronunciation in this article.
I can't wait.
If I mask it all in a Germanic, obviously she's Austrian, accent, it won't be quite so bad.
I think if you do that, you're definitely not going to offend anyone.
Yeah, okay.
Brilliant.
After graduating from Stiftsgym... Oh, me.
Wow. Yes,
After
please.
graduating
And just
from-
once more.
After graduating from Stiftsgymnasium Melk, Haselböck studied with Rita Streich at the Vienna Music Academy and continued at the Hochschule für Musik Detmold with Ingeborg Rüss. These are made-up names. There's no way.
Yeah, it sounds like you're reading like Warhammer lore,
It does a bit,
not like
yeah.
Austrian musicians.
Finishing with diplomas for both performing and vocal education and praising Sigma. She received further vocal training by... Oh, Jesus Christ. No. Oh, okay. Right. She received further vocal training by Brigitte Fassbender, Sina Jurinak, Mariana Libovcek, Christa Ludwig, and Eva Randova, and took masterclasses with Kurt Equiluth. Why did I go half Spanish at the end? Kurt Equilus, Kurt Widmer, and Edith Selig-Pape. God, that was a lot. We've now lost all
that was a
Germanic
thing that
listeners.
happened. Incredible.
I might actually have to put Bavarian music underneath that.
Yeah, you need some kind of like tame band.
Yeah, the benign side of Bavaria, not the militant world domination side of it, but the look at me in the Alpes and my lederhosen side of Austria.
A bit of Sound of Music.
Yes, which I've never seen. I've still never seen The Sound of Music.
Have you not?
No. It's a real gap in my film education. Tell you what,
Bit of a classic.
So speaking of classics that are a gap in education, Rez, our boy Rez has, he'd been playing some, not been playing some World of Warcraft. You couldn't make it the other day, which he was telling me about over Rocket League. Basically, he had never seen a Star Wars. He'd never seen any of them, much like Pixel Girl still hasn't. And he watched it the other day and did like a live commentary on the Discord. And he was like, this is not what I expected Darth Vader to sound like.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know what I expected him to sound like, but based on his breathing, not like that was his message.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what... I'd be really curious to know what people who haven't seen Star Wars, have never heard him speak, what do they think Darth Vader sounds like? Like, I can't imagine it any other way than James L. Jones, in the hospital ventilator.
Perhaps the breathing made people assume that he was going to have some like quite high, quavery, wheezy, asthmatic voice. Or kind of like the voice that the default voice that you get in The Simpsons of the teenager who works in a fast food restaurant. That kind
Mr.
of voice.
Johnson, it happened again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh boy, yes. Rez, let us know what you thought Darth Vader was meant to sound like. But also, he's saying he's halfway through, he doesn't understand what's going on. Leia is a badass. Where do they find the people to be he actually called them Star Troopers. Star Troopers. They're dumb as shit.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
I mean, I can't wait to watch the Star War with Pixel Girl for the first time. She's got an experience to look forward to, and I'm just.
Are you going to watch them in chronological order?
No, we're going to do the correct order, which I think was Peter Robinson's invention, which was 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and then you don't watch 9.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, actually, to be fair, I don't know. Where would you insert Rogue One? Do you insert Rogue One before? No, after the prequels, but before Episode 7, I guess.
I'd insert it into a DVD player and nowhere else, I think. Otherwise, you'd probably get into a world of trouble and pain.
Yes, that's a Sarah, a sexual activity-related accident.
Can you insert it?
I think between 6 and 7. Because, I mean, really, it's episode 3.5, but if you're not going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't make sense to put it between them, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an odd one. I feel like we always need our viewers' input on this one because we just don't have any clue what we're talking about, frankly.
Indeed. Readers, write in, tell us what we're doing wrong.
Please, we need this. There's an absolute dearth of content in this podcast, as you can probably tell at this point. Like, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a conversation on the Discord, on the Wikicast channel, that people were trying to nominate us for a podcasting award. And really? My response was just, why? You know? Like,
I mean, that would be the icing on the cake.
I don't understand why on earth what we could possibly win. Other than, I mean, you know.
Well, have you looked at the categories? Perhaps there is one that is it's just crying out for a Wikicast win.
It's the listener's choice, I think.
Oh.
Also, by us talking about this in the episode, we're absolutely not condoning putting the Wikicast up for any awards whatsoever.
I think for hilarity's sake, I am absolutely condoning it.
Can you imagine if we turned up? Can you imagine
even if we make it into like a top 5, and we're up against maybe serious podcasts that actually have a point, and then there's us just kind of.
It's like the award show thing. It cuts to the different nominees in the crowd. It's like, this is the Wikicast first nomination, and it's just us two in like tuxedos, crossed fingers. Like, come on, we're really hoping for this. And now we cut to the BBC's podcast about the Apollo program.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. We'd be at the end of this nomination reel, and it cuts to us in tuxedos, but we're just finger painting at the table. Yeah, like we're just so out of our depth.
And I'm showing you a card I've made out of macaroni.
Yeah.
And glitter.
I'm kind of applauding really sarcastically. Perfect. Make it happen. Come on, make it happen.
Oh, God, that would be hilarious. The least deserving award ever. Right, okay. So let's get back to the point of the podcast, ostensibly, which is this Austrian singer, Hermine Haselböck. Basically, she sings opera. Apparently, she sings opera, concert, and lead. I'm not entirely sure what they mean by concert. Surely that's just you're performing lieder or opera or arias from sacred works in a concert. That's not a genre on its own. I mean, you're the professional singer here. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't know, to be honest. I think this is slightly above me.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I feel like a lot of people who have never sung or haven't sung in a professional context. Well, I was a professional singer, I suppose, in the sense that I was paid to do it. They don't understand there's like a hierarchy of how difficult different kinds of singing are, and at least as far as I'm concerned, opera is at the very top of how difficult. Both the material and the performances, because I think the thing about, I would also put cathedral singers up at the top in terms of the difficulty of performance, just because you do it every day. You know, it's and that's so when you're a concert singer, or if you sing sacred stuff in concert materials, or if you're a pop singer or whatever, there may be times when you do performances back to back if you're touring, for example, but it's just not the same experience as singing your bollocks off every day in a cathedral at potentially really difficult music.
It's comparable, I suppose, too, to people like Carrie Hope Fletcher and doing West End shows.
Yeah, West End, exactly the same. Yeah,
that's crazy. You know, because a West End run not only goes on for ages, but you're looking at like 8 shows a week.
Yeah,
which is just insane.
I think the difference there is the music itself. I think that obviously it depends if you're a principal in a West End show. That's outrageously hard. But certainly if you're chorus or if you're a supporting character, it's not as difficult, really. But you do obviously have to do things like act, and you have to dance and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to cathedral stuff, you are almost invariably singing at close to the limit, close to the peak of what you can do, because the music will be difficult and you'll be learning new music all the time. You know, that's what makes it difficult. So with the utmost respect to you and to all the stuff that I used to do, I just think opera is that step above, because like a West End run, you have these insane performance demands and doing it every day. But the music is so much harder, and you have to project so much more. The actual the technicality of the music, the technique required to sing that music in a way that is required for an operatic performance is unbelievably demanding. I could never do it.
Sure.
Have you sung much stuff from opera? I know you've done a little bit, but not much.
I've done little bits in like lessons where I've learnt pieces from opera and sung those, and I mean I don't dislike it, but it certainly doesn't thrill me like singing this. I'm currently my lockdown learn at the moment is this Dies Natalis piece, which is for solo tenor by Gerald Finzi, and I'd much rather sing a work like that. And I think it comes down to me trying to find music that I enjoy singing and music that suits my voice. So, you know, a big, loud, kind of twangy operatic tenor, you know, Pavarotti-esque, let's say, doesn't really fill me with great excitement and joy. However, I really love listening to someone like Ian Bostridge, who's got quite a unique voice, but he does kind of quite high but gentle crooning tenor really well. I think anyway, I enjoy it, and that's the kind of music I like to sing. I'd much rather sing something that an audience has to like hang up on your every word, rather than you're trying to blow them off the chair with the sound of your voice, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I used to think that I didn't like opera because, you know, for context, my mum is an amateur opera singer, although she stepped back a bit now, but she's done it for like, God, 40 odd years. So I grew up listening to it, and I used to think I didn't like opera, and I realised when I started singing that actually I do. What I don't like is unnecessary amounts of vibrato, which is just something that a lot of... It's a style of singing opera that is just so over the top to me. I just can't enjoy it. And I think that's why I prefer Anglican music and Lieder and that kind of thing, because you're just removing that layer of fuzz from the top of it, you know. But I mean, from to ask you as a singer, from your perspective, what is there that's technically different about singing opera and the way that you're supposed to sing compared to singing, for example, in, you know, Anglican music in a cathedral?
I noticed that when doing operatic work in lessons and things, there is such an incredible emphasis on the anatomical side of singing and preparing everything and really thinking about every kind of muscle that's involved in singing from your waist to the top of your head, and really making sure everything's kind of lined up. And it's incredibly kind of, you could almost use the word formulaic, and that kind of goes through your mind, and it reaches a point when you do it regularly enough that all of those things that you're consciously thinking about become second nature. Whereas I think, certainly for me, I enjoy singing sacred music, or even secular music that we might be singing in concert in a cathedral, because usually, and this obviously varies with difficulty and how the line is written for a tenor, you know, if it's very high, and regardless of volume, you need to put so much more thought into how you're singing it, because you can't just not think about anything and not support anything and not prepare anything, because it will sound dreadful or it'll go wrong. But usually it's more of a kind of like an emotional response to the music that dictates the singing of it, rather than you thinking about, you know, you almost disconnecting yourself from the meaning of the text and thinking, right, okay, I need to think about, you know, is my breath good? Are my legs far enough apart? Does my back feel open? Have I kind of like, they talk a lot about imagining the back of your head was a letterbox, and you've got to take that opening of the letterbox and open it out, and that's akin to raising the soft palate, or creating space in the head, so the sound is more kind of resonant, especially when you're going higher up in a tenor voice. And the other thing that was mental to me, but I'm starting to really understand now, is this idea of nasal block. So you use this certainly as a tenor all the time when you reach a certain note in a scale, anything around a kind of, I don't know, an F sharp onwards, you suddenly start, it sounds like you start singing everything through your face, not through your mouth.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Kind of close off your nose, and it allows you almost stop making vowel sounds in your throat. It's quite complicated to explain, but it was an amazing thing because it suddenly it can add like 4 or 5 notes to the top end of your
to your range.
Yeah, which was crazy because I remember doing one of my first lessons and doing some warm-ups and things, and we were getting pretty high up there, and I kind of pride myself on having pretty good like reference pitch. It's by no means perfect, but it's pretty good.
I mean, and just to clarify something, when you're saying all this stuff about physically supporting the sound, is that basically just to ensure the volume? Because operatic stuff you need to sing incredibly loud.
Yeah. So you use your body in opera to make your sound louder. That's true, but I think it's also the quality of the sound and how whether the sound. Imagine you could, if you were thinking of the sound you make as a colouring in book. If you don't think about it at all, you've just bought this book and there are black lines and white spaces on the page, and you can see there's an image there, but it's pretty 2D. You know, it's just there's no color, let's say. And then the more support and consideration you put in, you might start to be adding maybe grayscale shading to that image, and then you might be adding actually some splashes of color to parts of that image, and then you might actually be adding like secondary shading to the color that was, and you're kind of building up like a kind of the composition of a painting, so being able to see kind of the palette knife markings on a canvas, and you can see the kind of texture and depth of the image. I think that's really what really good technique and classical technique does. It allows you to color in your music a lot more. It's like listening to Sondheim. Sondheim's music's incredibly colorful, and he typically picks performers. That's why he fell in love with Meryl Streep, and she did loads of work with Sondheim, because he loves the kind of the quality of her voice. And she's done a lot of singing through her acting career, and she would have had lessons. So it's, I think thinking about music as a 3-dimensional thing as opposed to just something more linear, you know?
There we go. This is the music cast now. This is what happens when we pass it over to Dan. I mean, we're meant to be talking about this singer, but that was me basically trying to say, this shit's hard. Like, there's a reason why, like, opera it was so esteemed. Obviously, it's less so now, and why these people have to train for so long, because it's not as easy as just opening your mouth and making a noise. And something that I can only understand how my mum thinks about it, and how, because I remember when I was a kid, she used to say that she just found a lot of modern music just so boring. And I think part of that is, frankly, it is basically 4 chords. It is less musically interesting, but also the actual performance of it is so bland compared to this kind of thing, compared to opera stuff. And I imagine that a lot of people at home are probably listening to this and thinking that we're just a bunch of upper class twats, because they may have only ever had this image of like Wagnerian, like woman with like horned helmets and belting with like huge amounts of vibrato, and it's not. That's only one small part of what opera is. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But also, what's kind of funny is, just thinking back to what my mum used to say, she used to say that, like, it is all this stuff's boring, but she absolutely adores some modern performers. Like, Ella Fitzgerald is one of her favourite singers, which I completely agree with. Because when you listen to her, she had an incredible warmth to her voice. She had a lot of colour to her voice, like that 3-dimensionality you're talking about, as does someone like Adele, I think.
Or the person that I immediately thought of was someone like Lewis Capaldi, actually, because his music is really very soulful, and I think absolutely, if we're thinking again in kind of 3 dimensions, especially when considering the voice, or comparing someone's voice, say a kind of a slightly more lowest common denominator pop artist, their voice might resemble a satellite image that you look up on Google Maps. But then if you compare someone who like, I would say Lewis Capaldi, it's like feeling a topographical map of something. There's levels and bumps and valleys and things, and that's so exciting. And that's probably why so many people engage with older music, because at that time you could only give as much color as your voice could give. This whole idea of really heavily editing the sound and layering EQ over EQ just didn't really happen, not for a long time.
I mean,
it's interesting.
The voice that stands out to me, and the voice that the more I sang and the more I learn about singing terrifies me more and more, is Freddie Mercury. When you listen to his, because there are videos online of his like raw vocals before they'd had anything that have gone into songs, but you hear them without any of the processing or anything. It's terrifying because he does all of this and then just ramps up to another level, because he was so distinctive in his voice, and also his range was so immense. I don't think there has been another singer that I can think of like him. No,
there's a really fascinating video on YouTube that talks about what makes his voice so distinct. And you mentioned vibrato, which is a kind of a natural thing the voice will do when kind of everything is this idea of thinking about the anatomy of the voice. When everything kind of is aligned and in the right place, a natural vibrato will happen to the sound. The sound will shake slightly, and I think that can be really pleasant, and when kind of tastefully kind of controlled, it's a beautiful thing. But interestingly, Freddie Mercury's voice, he if you were to measure the vibrato in terms of kind of like wavelengths, his voice waves and kind of shimmers much faster than a typical human vibrato, which is what gives his voice such a kind of a really cutting,
it's a shimmering
sound
kind of sound.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's really incredible.
Right, you know what? I just realised, Dan. Why are we not in Dan's choral piece of the week? We should just be talking about this there.
I got it, yeah. And this will be my piece of the week. Drum roll, please. So my choral piece of the week, I'm going to be diving back into what I've done in previous episodes, where it's not a specific piece, but rather a collected kind of work, and it's quite different. And so far I've only listened to, I would say, probably the first half of this kind of collection, but it's by Poulenc. And it comes on recommendation of Joe Reed.
Oh, big fan already. Big fan. Stellar chap, and absolutely fabulous taste in music. I'm meant to be Zooming him next week, which will be lovely because I haven't spoken to him in ages. For those for readers who don't know, Joe was a student at the University of Exeter when Simon and I were there, and he also sang. He was a fantastic bass in the he appeared in a couple of vlogs. I think the episode where we featured the Allegri Miserere semi-chorus, he's the bass in that, if you want a visual reference. But we were chatting the other day, and we were talking, actually. He messaged me saying how much he enjoyed the Arnold Bax piece. I wanted to tell you, I listened to that this week, and it is quite phenomenal, actually. Never heard anything quite like it. And a few days later, he said, I don't know whether you've come across this, old man, but I highly recommend you have a listen. It's by Poulenc, and it's his cantata for double mixed choir, and it's called Figure Humaine, Human Figure. Right. And it was written during the Nazi occupation of France. Premiered in London in 1945. And it's terrifying. As I say, I've listened, I would say I've listened to the kind of the first half, and I'll probably be listening to the rest later today. But it's really, it's really haunting, I think. It says here, I've just pulled up the Wikipedia page for it. The poems of the cantata are among the most famous by Paul Éluard, who's a French poet and one of the founders of the Surrealist movement. But he says they express the suffering of the people of France, reduced to silence and hope of the final triumph from freedom over tyranny. But it's really seriously powerful stuff, and I'm quite
I think most singers have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Poulenc because he writes really sickeningly hard stuff to sing. But it's amazing and really different. And Joe was absolutely right that I would like it, and it's a brilliant recommendation. So I thought I would share his recommendation with the readership because it really is superb.
So that's giving me vibes of the quartet for the end of... Oh, God, is it the quartet for the end of the world? Quartet for the end of time? The... Oh, God, this is where I am going to have to butcher the pronunciation, probably. Quartet for the End of Time by Messiaen, which was the one that was written and premiered in a prison camp. I don't know if it was actually a concentration camp or if it was just a prison camp. Prisoner of war camp, that was it. Stalag 8A, which is similarly... the final movement is probably the most haunting piece of classical music you'll ever hear. It's famous for a reason, but yeah. So okay, right? No, because I love this piece. I love the sense of melancholy you get from it. So I will have to check it out. What normally happens is when I'm editing the show, I'll like pull all of it together and then write down as I'm going like what notes I want to include in the description. And when I get to the piece of the week, it's like right. And then when I finish, we'll put that on. So I look forward to future Simon. I hope you have a good time listening to that. Good recommendation, Dan and Joe. So I wanted to take a brief dip into Critic's Corner, Dan.
Sure.
I had two things that I wanted to briefly touch on because I realized we've been going for quite a while. We talked about opera for quite a while.
A long time, yeah.
But two things I briefly wanted to mention. Firstly, I have an update on the Simon and Pixel Girl Depressing Film Club.
Oh, yeah.
But I finally got my way and we finally watched The Breakfast Club. Now, have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Right, you should. It's very good. It's very 80s, and it's got a bunch of interesting themes to do with parents and following in the footsteps of your parents and stereotypes and misconceptions and all these kind of things. And it's fundamentally a well-made, funny 80s coming of age kind of film, all like a bottle episode, all taking place in one library. And there was a moment though in the middle of it where I thought that it was going to go down exactly the same depressing path that we'd seen for the previous 2 weeks. For those of you who have seen the film, there's the thing with the flare gun, and I was just like, oh god, no, don't let this happen. But fortunately, it pulled out of that nosedive, and it was a very enjoyable watch. So you should watch it. It's good. It's on Netflix, and would recommend. The other thing, actually. Follow-up from last week. I don't know if we have any correspondence on it, though. Let me just check. I don't want to ruin Correspondence Corner. No, I think we're good. Okay, so Dan V, amongst other people, including my friend Claire, who listens to the show, sent me the reason why we couldn't place the Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, yes.
So apparently it forms part of the plot of an episode of Community.
Yeah.
Which... apparently I expressed later in the episode because I described something as being like a wrinkle in my brain, which is a line that Troy says. So for those of you who've also been frustrated at why we couldn't place it, and perhaps you can place it, it's from Community. That's where it's from. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to bring up was I have a new favourite form of exercise that I have taken up, and it's perfect for lockdown. And you may laugh, but it's skipping.
Oh, yeah.
So I bought a jump rope. I'm actually interested to see how much I paid for it because I've gotten so much value out of this thing. I bought like the Amazon recommended skipping rope, basically.
Does it have nice pink and purple tassels on the handles?
It's bright green on the tassels. How much was it? It was £13. So it was quite expensive, but it's like good quality one. And what I've been doing is I've been converting we have a car hole underneath our house. To call it a garage is somewhat overstating it.
Wishful thinking.
And what I've been doing is going in there and doing HIIT, so high intensity interval training of skipping 30 seconds and then having a 30-second rest and repeating that for 20 minutes and then alternating feet, so 30 seconds but jumping from foot to foot, and then doing like a set of skipping followed by burpees followed by jumping jacks, that kind of thing. And it's, for something that's so simple, you're literally just jumping over a rope over and over again. It's surprisingly addictive and fun because there is actually a technical challenge to it, and you have to keep on your toes, quite literally.
Yeah.
Or you end up hurting yourself on your legs. If anybody is struggling for a fitness recommendation in lockdown, I highly recommend getting yourself a skipping rope and just doing intervals. But it's been quite fun because it's in the car hole. I've been able to do my 30 seconds of exercise, and then I have 30 seconds to try and tidy, because it was a state when I started. But like in 30-second increments, I've been dusting, hoovering, organizing boxes, assembling a table that I can put like my timer on my phone on and stuff like that. And it's looking quite nice now. I've got a poster up. I'm going to put a couple of other posters up probably. I have a man cave.
Turning into a bit of a man cave, is what I was going to say.
But it's really nice. It's nice because I did it originally. I was skipping out in the garden, but I felt a bit weird about the neighbours being able to see me doing an activity that normally is done by 6-year-old girls. So
well, by skipping in the car hole and not in the garden, you can reserve garden activities for tiptoeing through tulips, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, quite. So I just that's if I'm being a critic, I would say that my new favourite form of exercise is the humble. I think Americans call it a jump rope rather than a skipping rope.
Yeah.
But if for those of you who get perhaps like me, getting a little bit frustrated by not being physically active during lockdown, give it a go. You don't need very much space. You don't need very much money. You don't even need trainers to do it. Though I would recommend wearing shoes because otherwise it fucking hurts your feet when you hit yourself.
Yeah, I bet.
But have you been doing much exercise in lockdown?
I've been doing lots of walking. I've been going on lots of walks. We're quite lucky in Exeter that there's so much green space, not only in certainly on the campus at Exeter University, but also you can walk down to the river, and within walking for 5 minutes you're out in the countryside. So that's amazing. I'm hoping when the weather starts to get better again, I'm going to try and get down to Exmouth a bit more, which is a really lovely beach, and it's right near. It's directly on the train line where in the house that Simon and I used to live in. So it's perfect really for getting down there. But the walking I've really enjoyed, and I've been re-listening to all of the kind of the old back catalogue of In Our Time, the Radio 4,
yeah,
which is fantastic, really, really good. So I've been enjoying that. I've also, I suppose I can talk about it in Critics Corner, but I'm not really critiquing it. It's more just me letting you and indeed the readers know that I've been watching something that I never thought I would watch in all, I can't believe it's happening, and I still feel a bit dirty about it, but I am. I've started watching Friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, it's something that I've known all through kind of growing up that Friends was is a cult classic and took everyone by storm and was massively successful, and there's about 1 million episodes every season. And I had friends at school who used to really, really like Friends. One friend of mine, her name was Rachel in Australia. She just kind of lived and breathed Friends, from what I can remember. Anyway, I started watching it, and I suddenly realised I would have been about 12 episodes into the first season, and I was really starting just to kind of get the appeal of it. The thing that I don't like about so many American kind of sitcoms, I suppose, is the canned laughter element. I find that really quite hard to listen to.
Yeah.
But it reaches a point where actually you just start to relate to the characters quite well, and you do just feel like you're one of them sitting on the sofa in Central Perk Cafe, the coffee shop. And it's not bad. And I think I'm on season 3, episode 4 now, and there's 10 seasons. Each season has I think about 20 or 22 episodes. And I haven't got frustrated with it yet. But,
that's high praise.
It's slightly alarming. Yeah. It's good. I mean, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad and I'm just doing it out of sheer boredom, but I was just surprised because I never thought I would actually end up watching it.
It's not a show that appeals, and I know that's going to anger a lot of people because I know it's like crack to some people. And look, I'm already catching up on Parks and Rec. Okay, guys, I already caved that one. I also caved and bought Overwatch. Actually, I don't know if that's something we should be to talk about. But yeah, Captain Reed and Rez convinced me to buy Overwatch, so I think that's going to be my new addiction.
Have you played any of it yet?
No, I felt like it'd be quite fun for me to do it for the first time on stream.
I'll need to tune in for that. That will be funny.
So, have you ever played it?
I think so. I think I've played it once, and it was all right. I mean, as long as I can use a keyboard and mouse, I can't play with a controller because my brain doesn't work like that. First person shooters aren't my bag, but I think it's quite good. I mean, and of course, because Overwatch 2 is coming out soonish, I think, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was released at BlizzCon this year, I think, or last year certainly.
Oh, well, perhaps now is a good time to get into it then, I guess.
Yeah.
Ride that bandwagon. Okay, right. Well, that was a bit of a... Did we come to a point then? I actually can't remember.
I mean, do we need to come to a point? I think by virtue of this podcast, I think we just kind of rather than coming to an explicit point, we're now in a different place, and that's okay.
That's all right. We can Let's just go with the flow. Well, we're about to go over a waterfall, Dan, because we're about to make it rain.
Oh God!
In Patreon corner.
Oh, here comes the waterfall.
Top lad. And after that vertiginous fall, we find ourselves in Patreon corner. This is... You guys know what Patreon is. You've been on the internet for longer than 5 minutes. It's a site where you can give us money, and in return, we make the funny podcast. Eventually. This is the 77th episode, and we'll eventually get there. We're trying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In our case, we just make a podcast.
We make a podcast. Just put money in... Get content out. That's how this thing works. Brilliant. Okay? And some people...
And that's exactly why we deserve to be nominated at the upcoming podcast awards. So please.
Because we respect our readership so much. Well, for some reason, the following people have decided to give $5 a month at patreon.com/the Wikicast and declared their undying support for Team Cat, which, Dan, I may well be adopting. Well, hopefully it's all but certain I am going to be adopting Pixel Girl and I's first cat next week, and I'll probably almost exclusively talk about the cat next episode. So you got that to look forward to, Team Cat fans.
You know full well I don't like them, but I'm very excited and happy for you that a cat is joining your household.
It's like a small furry baby. I'm so excited. I've got a bed by my desk so that it can be with me at all times. I will carry it around on this thing like a palanquin. Anyway, so thank you to the following people who so generously donate and keep the show on the air. In all seriousness, Choco Cat, Christopher Betterton, Cole Mansfield, Dan Hanvey, Isabella Strowski, Izzy Christie, Jack Easton, John Mannion, Kenneth Kuzmierek, Layla Medina, Nafi Iftikhar, Oliver Burkhart, Oliver Craigie, Omar Miranda, Princess Andromeda, Rents Cook, River Ward, we just went over River Ward, Simon P, Thomas Hill, Tom Withington, Trustworthy Ginger, and William Humphreys.
Superb. And I would like to say a massive thank you to those sensible folk who have seen the truth, have been enlightened, and realised that.
God, William Humphreys has got
them dogs.
He's got a really cool. Sorry to interrupt you. He's got a really cool Patreon profile picture. Really cool original art. Sorry, as you were, I just got distracted.
Oh, that's all right. That's fine. So I'd like to say a massive thank you to Alistair Fortune, Alex #TeamDog, Ben McMurtry, Colin J. Brown, Eric Davis, Eric Bolliger, Eve Sharples, Jay Wright, Kodzo, Lexi at front desk. That's never not going to be funny. Maggie, Peter Reed, and Samantha.
Thank you very much to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We joke, but you do make the show possible. And after this recording session, Dan, I need to have a chat to you about a certain word that begins with M.
Yes.
Milk.
Men, isn't it? It's men. That's okay. That's cool.
Men. Top lad. Yes, you!
And it's that time again where we find ourselves in Correspondence Corner. And this week, Simon, we have something rather exciting.
Oh?
We have an email here from Cameron, and it is titled The Podcast Trials. It reads as follows. Greeting, Messrs. Mark and Claw. I, Cameron Steele, present to you today the very first of at least 4 chapters of the podcast Trials, a choose-your-own-adventure series that will bring your love of tangents to new heights.
What? It's
Disclaimer, choices do not become available until chapter 2. This is good, so we're going to read the first chapter this week, and we can get excited for that thrill. He goes on to say further, you will be sent on a quest no less imposing or terrible than the challenge of screwing a bottle cap back on when it's slightly crooked and the screwy hinge things just don't want to line up properly. You will be challenged to prove yourselves knowledgeable in your favourite subjects, and you will be called upon to demonstrate the strength of the bonds you've developed with the people you've met in your podcasting adventures thus far. Are you ready to embark on this perilous journey? Then read on, gentlemen.
God.
Read on.
Right, hit me. I am so ready.
Now, I'm thinking already about the. You're going to have to choose a good soundtrack for this, okay?
Okay.
This podcast Trials. So, base your music choice on the title of the first chapter. The rather terrifically meandering exposition exhibition. A blustering wind rubbed and rustled against the walls of Daniel Moore's modest home, squeezing an ominous draught into the room where Dan and Simon had decided to meet. Despite the chill, Dan found himself perspiring with trepidation at the seriousness of the meeting ahead. As he readied himself to speak, he mopped the sweat from his forehead with a small beach towel. Superb. Well, Simon, Dan announced, straightening up in his chair. I'm thankful that you agreed to meet with me today. Simon mumbled a muffled response from his revolving computer chair as he stuffed his cheeks with recently purchased scones. Dan felt that, despite Simon's apparent lack of attention, and the speed at which he spun in his chair, and the focused effort with which he watched The Simpsons on his phone, his friend was probably as concerned as himself about the matter at hand.
How has this person never met us but has us down to a f***ing T?
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? I'm sure you're aware of the problem here. Simon looked up sheepishly and swallowed a sizable bite of his scone. Right, sorry, here you go. He handed Dan the last of his present pastry.
Is a scone a pastry? Does it count as a pastry?
I don't know.
It's a baked good. I don't think it would be classed as a pastry. Carbs are serious business, everyone.
We'll do that line again. He handed Dan the last of his present baked good.
Thank you.
Dan shook his head exasperatedly. No, you blubbering pig. I ate an entire carrot for brunch. I'm fine. I'm talking about the Wikicast. Our livelihood is at stake. Do you know that? Simon scoffed at this. Then he scoffed again. Then he scoffed yet again, scoffing down, yes, yet another scone, before wiping his mouth daintily with a handkerchief, turning to Dan and scoffing in derision at Dan's remark. The podcast is going great. It's bringing in thousands of dollars a day. I'm almost able to afford all the Warhammer figures I've been trying to buy. And with the money left over, I might be able to pay my gas bill or even buy my parents a Christmas present this year. Dan nodded. Yes, the money has been a great boon for me as well. If I'm ever going to become Archbishop of Canterbury, I'll need to keep funding the construction of my cathedral. But listen, Simon, everything is at risk. Some of the more dedicated fans have listened back to the episode where we talk about Pixel Girl. People are becoming suspicious that she isn't what she seems.
Oh, God.
If they realise that it's just you in a wig modifying your voice by putting pressure on your testicles, our fan base will collapse from distrust. How long can you keep up this act anyway? Simon sat up and looked at Dan with a heroic gleam in his eye. I've got balls of steel. Listen, regardless of your capacity to withstand torturing yourself, we need an influx of profits, and soon. When our female listeners realise that you're single, you'll be incapacitated for months. You'll be working day and night to fend off the lusty hordes craving the companionship of your statuesque bronzed body and the financial security of your incredible academic achievements. Like my PhD. Yes, like your PhD, Simon.
When do we make a choice, Dan?
I'm sure that despite your skill at spending our podcast and Patreon money, I bought a horse. Yes, I'm sure you did. Look, we need to build up a nest egg in case everything falls apart on us, and I think I know exactly how we're going to do it. Simon was intrigued. Tell me then. Dan wheeled his chair aside, revealing a window on his MacBook labelled Apple Podcasts. Check this out. He pointed to a little box of text in the bottom right of the screen. It said, Apple Podcasts present an exceptional opportunity. Prove your expertise on the topics discussed on your podcast, and your show will be put to the top of the charts for 3 weeks. Simon sat back in his chair, grinning, a finger pressed to the corner of his mouth in the style of the eponymous Dr. Evil. By God, the words oozed out slowly as he mulled over the idea. We might just be crazy enough to work. Dan shot a sidelong glance at Simon and his mangled idiom. We might just be crazy enough to work. Dan shot a sidelong glance at Simon and his mangled idiom. That's exactly what we're trying not to do. So, what say we get started? Dan clicked on the text box. And then, he and Simon were gone. The laptop slammed shut, a half-eaten scone fell to the floor, and the room was wrapped in fresh baked good crust of silence. I had to change pastry to baked good there. And that is the end of chapter 1.
Oh my God, when did we make a choice?
So he did say, it was prefaced that choices don't happen until chapter 2. So I think this was an exposition.
I see.
And then we go, but we've decided to take up Apple on their opportunity to prove our expertise, and if we do well, our podcast will be put at the top of the charts for 3 weeks. And by agreeing, we have vanished. We don't know where, we don't know how, but we have gone.
Oh, wow. God.
Golly.
I am excited for this. This is great. Was that Cameron who wrote that?
Yeah.
But Cameron, I await part 2 with eagerness.
Exciting.
Very well. I mean, we're actually kind of out of time, but that's the perfect way to finish off the podcast, Dan. Holy cow!
Holy cow! Blessed salmon! Holy mackerel! Amazing!
All the holy animals. It's like somebody took a hole punch to a zoo.
I can't wait to hear what happens in this. So, Simon, what have we learnt today?
Well, today, Daniel, we learned about Hermine Haselböck, an Austrian mezzo-soprano in opera, concert and lead. And then we basically ignored that and just talked about how difficult opera was for quite some time.
Pretty much.
And you talked about your experiences in singing lessons and your choral piece of the week, courtesy of Joe Reed.
We also discussed, you were waxing lyrical about the joys of a skipping rope.
Yes, indeed.
I mentioned my alarming foray into the world of Friends. That's the TV show, not just actually
having friends.
Making companions. Yeah. I wouldn't be foolish enough to do that, don't worry.
Oh gosh, no, definitely not. And then we finished off with a teaser, the pilot episode of a new Choose Your Own Adventure that we're going to star in. And I am incredibly excited, but also somewhat nervous about what moral quandaries they're going to give us on this one. This is going to be interesting.
This is the start of the podcast trials, and it's going to be incredible.
Oh, God. Why do I get the impression it's going to end up more like the Nuremberg trials than the podcast trials?
Oh, gosh. And that's all for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice. You can join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
Thoughts on opera, your favourite forms of exercise, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole.
And we'll see you next time.
Right. Dun, dun, dun. And that's all for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us. Sorry, I can't. You have to do that again, because as I started, you're just going.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I don't know what I thought I was helping by doing that. I was like, do you want to carry on?
Yeah, brilliant. Really, really helping me get into the zone. Oh, golly. Okay. Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole. 3, 2, 1.
And we'll see you next time. Hey, Dan.
Brilliant.
It's your dad, Avi. Welcome to the West Coast.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, bye.